Sasa, and today I'm not Sasa, I'm actually Snow White, and here we have the beautiful Annie, and she's actually not Annie today. She's Cinderella. We're both Disney princesses, and so today with this video I'm going to show how to make this dress. It's really simple. It's the same pattern that you buy with this one, and like they're really basic costume sewing basic constructions, so it's really easy to follow. So this one is actually more simple because this one has more steps. It's just a plain the skirt with like this extra puff that you just basted. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Okay, for the bodice lining, you make it the same way as you do for the main bodice. So you sew the center seam down, the two darts in the front, the side seam, also the dart in the back, as well as the shoulder seams. When you're sewing darts, you want to start at the fat end, right here, this is the fat end, and you want to do your back stitching and you sew, and when you get to this end over here, you don't want to do any back stitching. Okay, so what you do, you want to get to sew like, and a couple times on like this, the crease, so that you can get nice and smooth, and you sew off and you just keep going, blah, 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 so that they have a long chain, and afterwards you tie a knot, and then you cut it and leave a little bit sticking out. That's the way to do darts. And then when you iron it, you have to make sure, there it is. Then when you iron it, you want to make sure you use the tip of your iron to smooth out this point right here. So after you've pretty much make the bodice and the lining the same way, you do the front seam, the side seams, the shoulders, the two darts in the front as well as the back. You do that the same for the lining. So with the right sides together, you place the lining, and then we'll sew the seam along the top edge, and afterwards I flipped it. This is the neck edge. I flipped it, and then I understitched. This is understitching. It's when you sew the lining to the seam allowance. So see, this is the seam allowance at the back here. That way, this is going to flip under. That way when you wear it, the lining is not going to pop out and you won't be able to see it. So you have the nice, and we'll just press this, and you'll have the nice, pure, nice finish. The next step is you take the lining here, and then we're going to baste it to the armhole. So all the way around, just like this. Baste those two together, then we can add the sleeve. And then we're going to baste the back edge, so this is where the zipper will be, as well as the bottom edge. We'll baste this all together. Okay, so for the skirt puff, so it's that puffy thing that sits on the side of your hips. So what it is a big circle, and you take the circle and you fold it in half, as I've done with this piece. So this is folded in half. This is just that organza, shiny blue. And then you do your basting again, lots of basting with this. So 2 rows of straight stitching, long stitches, with no back stitching at the end. We're going to start to pull these threads, and we're going to gather all this, and it'll be called scrunched up. So it'll be like this, and so then this is what will sit nicely, like looks like a leaf petal. This will sit on the side of your hip, so you need 2 of these. For the skirt puff, it's a big circle that's been folded in half, and then you're gonna 2 lines of long stitches to baste it. So look, this is now it's a half circle. You're gonna gather it, and then you're gonna place it to the bodice, to the end of the bodice, like this. So this is all gathered, so that way when you wear it, when it comes out, see, look, there's the skirt puff. This skirt, so on that V part in the front, you want to go back and forth here. This is just to reinforce it. So this is just a regular straight stitching back and forth. And then after, we're going to clip this, and then that's where you're going to point the V, and you need it to be strong, right? Afterwards, that's just the front piece. Then you want to sew the back pieces onto the front piece. So the front piece is just one there with the fold. I iron it later. So I've sewn it on straight. 1.5 centimeters, and then I'm going to use my serger and finish off the edge. Afterwards, we'll iron this. And the lining is the same pattern and size as the dress, but I've made it a little bit smaller. Okay, so all you do is from the back pieces, see, look, the side back pieces are just this much, because the lining is just pretty much so that you don't feel the netting against your skin, and so it's more comfortable to wear. So we make the lining the same way. We'll sew this little bit in the V front. Sew the 2 side seams. So I have this pinned, and then I'm just going to serge this right off. And then we baste along the top edge, and then we scrunch this up. So for the skirt part, it's 3 sections. The front section, which is folded in half, and it has that V point. And what you want to do to reinforce it, you sew back and forth. This is on the seam line with regular stitching. This is just to reinforce it. And then you sew on the seam. So there's two seams, the two side seams. So I did the regular sewing machine, then I just serged off the edge so it doesn't fray, and I iron this. And then you do 2 rows of very long stitching, and then we're going to pull the threads over here, and then we're going to gather this all along until it matches the same width as the bodice. To attach the skirt to the bodice, what you do, you take the right side, this is the bodice, we already basted the skirt puff on, and with the skirt, and I'm making a lining, so there's 3 layers here, the bodice, the skirt, and then the lining. So you put it together. You have to be really careful when you use like a lot of pins, because you want to make sure all the gathers are even. So then I sewed all the way across. You flip it over, you make sure to check that you didn't miss anywhere, because lots of times the fabric, it can move, so you fix those. And then afterwards I just went with my serger and I cleaned up this edge right there. Okay, and now we're going to do the zipper. So this is the seam. I just serged all the way along. I left the lining separate. I serged all the way along to the end. We're going to put the zipper in and then finish off the bottom seam. And then same with the lining. Okay, so for the sleeve, it's supposed to be cut 2, but I actually cut 4. And we're going to double it up because only 1 layer, look, it's really quite thin. You can barely see it. So I'm doubling it up, so that would be the sleeve. And also I cut it a bit longer here so to give you more room to do the hem, because it's working with this material, it's kind of slippery. So right now we're going to finish up a hem right here, and you have to make sure you leave a space because we're going to thread an elastic through the bottom, okay? And then the top here, we're going to do basting, so really long stitches, and then afterwards we thread the elastic through and we attach it, and this will be all bunched up. Okay, so here's a sleeve. So I did the long stitching here. So what we're going to do here, we'll just pull one of the threads and see, we'll gather it. Right, so that will be gathered, and then we have to fit it to our sleeve hole. Okay, so I thread the elastic in. Okay, so there it is, and you have to continue threading it all the way. Once you hit the end, you just use your sewing machine and like sew over back and forth so this doesn't move. And once you bring this all the way to this end, do the same thing. Afterwards, we'll close off and finish the seam here, and then we'll adjust these gathers to fit the sleeve to the bodice. Here's a finished sleeve. Now you can see it better. So here's the gathered part, and here's the elastic, and then the seam is sewed here. Okay, so you take the right sides together, and you start by pinning at the underarm seam, because you want that to line up, and then bring the pins and adjust the gathers. So normally I hold it out like this first to see if I need to make the gathers smaller or bigger. Afterwards, you pin it all, finish with this, and then sew all the way around, and then I'm going to serge it off just so it has a nice finish. So to make the dress puffy, so I have this netting here, and you have to make sure that it's quite long. Normally you want it the length of this whole thing, because it's going to be gathered and scrunched up. You want to at least double or even more. So this is 2 layers. So I have, see this one, it's cut, so there's 2 layers. What I did, all I did was with a basting stitch, which is like the longest length possible, I just sewed all the way down 1, and then I did it again. Do not back stitch. Afterwards, we're going to pull these threads here, and then we're going to gather up all of this, right, boom, 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 and we're going to sew it to the lining of the dress. Okay, so after you installed the zipper and that's sewn in, you want to finish up the bottom seam all the way to the end, right? And then the last touches is finishing off the hem of the skirt. So I just folded over once, folded over twice, and then sewed. You could do it in 2 steps if it's too difficult, so I just did it in 1 step. And then I added an extra piece of, I added the lining so that I could add the netting. This to help it make a bit more poofy. And the lining, you make it the same as for the skirt, except I made the width a bit smaller, since it doesn't need to be that poofy on the inside.